Welcome to Monet Cafe. I'm artist Susan Jenkins, and in today's lesson, you are going to learn a whole lot by this simple cow painting. We'll even have a quick little lesson in Photoshop on color and value and how you can intensify the color in your painting. If you would, go ahead and like this video. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you hit the little bell next to the subscribe button, you'll be notified of any future videos I post. I am so grateful to those of you who have decided to become patrons of mine on my Patreon page. For only $5 a month, you keep these free videos coming and you get extra content. In today's lesson, I will primarily be using the Jack Richeson hand-rolled soft pastels. This is the 40 set. It's called the Landscape Set. And what you see me doing here, I created my own color guide. I go in later and mark the numbers. I love to do this for sets before I start using them. Now, what I'm focusing on in today's lesson is showing you how you can use some creative color. And I get this question all the time. How did you use a color different than what you saw in the reference image? And it's really not that hard. I'll be using primarily these blues to create a painting of a cow where the reference image didn't really show these colors. So how do you go about doing that? And fortunately, it's not really all that hard. So let's get started. I'm going to share with you a little more product information. For your convenience, I love the fact that Amazon has allowed me to become an Amazon influencer. I have my own Amazon shop. I have these lists called Idea Lists, and I have all kinds of products prearranged into categories. One of them happens to be pastel papers and more. The surface I'll use for this painting is Pastelmat by Clairfontaine. It comes in pads of different colors. I'll be using this color that's within this pad called Sand. I also use the white Pastelmat sometimes, but really I think you guys would love to check out my video section where I clicked that little bubble right there. I happen to have a video on Pastelmat that gives a lot of information in case you're more interested in that particular surface. And these product review videos are literally like lessons within themselves. So check those out, and I'm adding more of these videos all the time. The reference image for today's painting can be found on unsplash.com. It's a really great site to get copyright-free reference images. I don't know why I didn't use a reference photo from one of the cows in my own backyard, but I liked this photo. Now, I have cropped this image and done some adjustments to brighten it up. If you're a patron of mine, you will get this image that I've adjusted. And no worries, if you're not a patron of mine, I'll have a clickable link in the description of this video to the unsplash.com reference image. And this is a really small piece of Pastelmat. Like I said, it's the sand color, and I'm just getting in a sketch with my charcoal pencil. I'm speeding this section up a bit more just to keep the video size smaller. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the sketching process, though. I like to, as I sketch, sometimes I'll make little marks. I don't love to make a grid, like get out my ruler and measure, but I'll make little reference marks to divide my surface, sometimes into fourths or sometimes into thirds. And you see those marks that I've gradually been adding. Now, this isn't quite as necessary for a landscape painting, but for things like people or animals, you want to make sure you get the anatomy right. So that helps me quite a bit. Now, I didn't mention how small this is. This is really a little small painting that was a scrap piece of Pastelmat left over from another piece that I had cut for another painting. I'm going to show you real quickly. I get this question all the time too. How do you put your painting up there like you do without taping the actual pastel paper? And I put a piece of tape on the back of the actual paper. You'll see me do it better in a minute on the bottom. What I do is I take a piece of tape. This is artist tape, and I have the sticky side towards me. I put it underneath, and then I take another piece of artist tape and tape it down so it holds it perfectly, and you can paint all the way to the edges. I'll first begin with a term that's called blocking in. And I often love to block in my darks first. And the obvious darks in this reference image are is the back and sides of the cow. If you squint your eyes, that gives you the ability to more clearly see. That sounds funny. You squint your eyes and you can see more clearly, but more clearly see values. What happens is you're reducing the amount of light that's getting in your eyes when you squint, and you can isolate the light and the dark and the middle values more clearly. And that is the best way to get started with a pastel painting, or really I think any painting, is to block in those values. And by doing this, you're going to make your painting experience so much easier, and the end result will be that it will be more impressionistic and painterly and cohesive. It will all have a harmonious feel rather than feeling like you segmented the painting by getting too detailed on any one area. So yes, I'm using this big old chunky dark pastel. This was the darkest dark in the Jack Richeson set, and it's really like a really dark blue. Now, also keep in mind, I'm blending right now with a chamois cloth. By the way, a chamois cloth, like you dry your cars with, I get them for a big old piece of it at the dollar store. But a chamois cloth works great for blending on this Pastelmat surface. The Pastelmat surface isn't super gritty, even though it holds a lot of layers of pastel. Now, you see, I even use it to blend some of the middle values. I used it, kind of the residue of it, to blend in some of the face as well. And that's pretty much it for the dark values of the cow. And remember, nothing has to be very detailed at this point. Blocking in big shapes and values. Now what I'm doing is I'm looking at some of the middle values or medium values with respect to color temperature as well. Now let me ask you a quick question. The cow's neck, what color is his neck? I'm talking like the lightest area underneath his chin. And many beginner artists would say, well, it's white. But let's see, is it really white? Here I am in Photoshop, and let me zoom in a little bit on this cow's face. And what I'm going to do is show you that if you get your values right and your color temperature pretty close to what it would be in the scene, you can get creative with color. Again, why would I be able to just take those blues that I'm using to lay down for the cow and have it work, but be artistically fun and creative? And that's because I'm keeping my values correct, or that's my attempt, and I'm just getting fun with color. So let me show you an idea of that. Now, first of all, to reiterate, this cow has some areas that are light and areas that are dark. We would say that his head, neck, and this lower part of his body, if you pulled one of those hairs out of each location and put them under the same lighting, they're probably all going to read as white or light, unless they're dirty. He is a dirty cow. But we as artists have to consider the environment that our subject matter is in. And in this environment, we have to think about where the light is coming from and what happens with respect to light and location. We know that sunlight, is going to cause things to lighten up in value, and often, depending on the, whether it's overcast or whatever, often it's going to warm things up a bit as well. So if we consider those things when painting, we can have some fun and break out colors that might be not local to the scene and a little more dramatic, and by keeping our values and color temperatures close. All right, let me see if I can show you how you can do this by an example in Photoshop. I'm using my paintbrush tool here, okay? Whoops, let me go up here. It's a brush tool, and I am just going to use it to show you what some of these colors actually are on the cow. I'm going to use something called the color picker. If I hit my Alt button on my keyboard, it gives me a little eyedropper icon, okay? And you probably can't see it, but if I click my mouse, let me show you. Well, first, before I do that, I'm going to show you over here. You see this color wheel? It's a circle. That's a color wheel. The triangle on the inside is going to show you the value of what my color picker picks. That's like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Value on the left side, and then chroma or intensity as you move further to the right. So lightest value being up here, darkest value being down here, and then your intensity is moving further to the right. I don't want to get overcomplicate this. And this shows you the actual color, okay? The chroma of the color. All right, so I'm going to use my color picker over here. I'm going to hold my Alt key down. Now I'm going to click on this light area on his muzzle. I'm picking kind of what looks like the brightest area, and I'm going to hold it down. All right, now that shows me, if you look over at the triangle, it shows you the actual color it is, which is kind of like a minty green. You wouldn't have thought that, right? And it's showing me how light the value is. It's very light. It's almost at the top of that triangle to the left. So, and the left side is very neutral. The right side is the high chroma. Now, if you see the circle that's on the cow here, the outer circle is gray. That's just to give you some contrast to see what the inner colors are. The top of that circle, if I move it around, you can see how it's changing colors, is going to show you the actual color of where that color picker is. So yeah, I was pretty close. That's like the lightest light right in there, okay? Now, as I move it around, watch what happens to the color temperature in the triangle and as the color changes in the circle, around my color picker. You see how cool some of this is over beside his face? It's because it's more in shadow. All right, same thing on the other side of his face. We're going to move across his muzzle, and once again, we are still cool. It's actually a little warmth to it because the sun is hitting more on that area. Now, let me take it further down. Let's start seeing what happens to the darkness. Still, I'm going to go to an area where the fur is white. But whoa, look how much darker it's getting down here. Even darker as the further we go down. Okay, that part right there is really in shadow. But as we go down, it continues to get darker. Okay, so let me see if I can, and look how blue it is on this side. This side is in shadow. This side is more in sunlight. Okay, see what I mean about considering your light source? And it gives you an idea of what you can do with color. All right. So now let me have a little fun, okay? So right now it's very cool, okay, down here under his right side of his neck. I like, obviously, the coolness. It's correct because it's in shadow, but I think I want to have some fun. I don't want it to be this super neutral teal blue color. I want to add some more purples. I'm going to move this around to kind of I know it's not going to be too warm. I wouldn't pick this color here because that's too warm. This thing is in shadow, okay? But I can go a little cooler if I want. I can go a little bit more like a purple or a little different, I could say, in color. I'm going to go with this more purpley color. And I can't remember where I was in the scene now, but I'm going to take my paintbrush. I don't have it set to where it's going to flow a lot. And I can start adding some of this purple. Let's say I want to get more purple on this cow. I don't want to, it's dark right now, but now I can move it up a little lighter here, lighter value, and up on his head, it's still that purple, but I lightened the value. You see how I'm lightening the value in the little triangle? I'm going to go even lighter, and I'm going to add some of this purple up in here. This is the cooler side of his face. Add some even over here on the ear. And now I'm speeding this up a bit, and I think you can more clearly see in the fast motion that what I'm doing is I'm keeping the values consistent with where they are, that area of the nostril right there. I'm keeping the value the same, the lightness or the darkness, but I'm intensifying the color a bit, and I'm sometimes changing the color just a bit. Now, what I'll be doing when you see me do the actual painting is similar to this, but I think it's going to be a great example for artists who have a limited palette. And if you just have different values of blues or different values of purples, you can use those colors in place of what you see in the image to really make your painting work, even though you don't have the exact colors that are in the painting. So not only does this strategy work for creating more interesting and dynamic color and more fun color, it works great if you don't have a lot of color as well. So again, to reiterate, I am considering the value, considering the temperature. Is it in a warm area? Is it in a cool area? And then I'm keeping the value similar, but I'm either changing the color a bit, not the value, or I'm intensifying the color a bit. So what I've done, even in the black fur, now you can see I intensified some of the purpley colors in the fur, and I've intensified some of the color in the muzzle and the ears. I thought I'd exaggerate it a little bit more and show you what happens when I have the color I've intensified and I take the saturation down, take the color away. I'm going to move the bar for saturation all the way down, and look, it looks the same. And that's because the values are still the same. So like I always say, you can get creative with color as long as you get your values right. So I really hope that was helpful. All right, now back to painting. And hopefully that little Photoshop education will give you an idea as to why I can take color like these blues, the neutral blues. You're going to see me choosing even more dramatic blues and purples. And I am choosing them because of their value and their color temperature. Now, the cow the reference photo had a lot of different colors going on, so it's also a good idea to simplify. I think sometimes we overwhelm ourselves as artists to think that we have to recreate so much of everything in the image, when truly, when we simplify, we not only make it easier on ourselves, but we have a more painterly end result. All right, so now you can see I've used 3 colors so far: the darkest dark, the blue I think I have in my hand again now, and another blue that was kind of in between those 2 colors. So I'm basically just using monochromatic values of blue. And now I'm adding, it's kind of a neutral grayish taupey color. And what I'm doing here is I'm adding a base color before I add my lightest highlights. I know that he has a lot of the white, what's considered white, on his head. There is light shining on it. And even though the surface of the Pastelmat wasn't really light, I still thought I needed to add a little bit of a tad of a different value down first before I add my lightest lights on top. And creating color contrast is really so awesome for making things stand out. And I'm doing a little more blending now with my chamois cloth. This is still considered the blocking in stage. I've gotten 4 colors of pastels down so far, and now I'm still on the same 4 colors. I'm just reinforcing the dark values of that darkest dark. You see, after all the blending and doing some painting, you sort of lose your darks a bit. So I'm just making them a bit darker in the areas where I feel it will make the composition most pleasing and make the most sense with this particular image. The insides of the ears were also quite dark, and as often with cows and many animals that have big ears, sheep, pigs, even dogs and cats, when you have a backlight coming, that just means light kind of coming from behind, the ends of the ears often will kind of get illuminated, and especially in pigs and sometimes in lamb photos, they'll be almost orangey pink, and it's really neat, and a little bit in this cow too. So keep that in mind. The inner ear, of course, anytime things are getting deep, like roots of grasses and things like that, you're going to get darker values. And so I'm just getting those in. And I'm also now I'm finally starting to add some lighter values, but I wanted to mention I'm also still kind of shaping my cow. When I get a sketch in, I try to get it fairly accurate, but sometimes I'll kind of correct things. Okay, now before adding anything really light, I decided I wanted to add, this is what I would call a punchy color. The value is right, but I'm still in the same kind of color family. I'm getting a little warmer in color temperature. And some of the light, like I said, was coming from behind the cow. So on some of these edges, I'm warming up the blues that I had used before, and a teal is literally a warm blue. I like to describe color temperature as things get closer to yellow on the color wheel. Like if you start with a blue and you move closer to yellow, you're going to get closer to green. And in between blue and green is like those teal, turquoise colors. So it's a warmer blue. By the way, I was honored to be asked to be a guest artist on the Pastel Live event that will be coming up later this year. And I am going to be offering a lesson on color temperature. And it's going to be a beginner lesson. You're going to get so much information in that. As you can tell, I love teaching on color. And so that should be a lot of fun. I'll be sharing more information about how to sign up for that. And it's not just me, please. I am like low man on the totem pole in this. There are some amazing pastel artists in this event. So I'll be sure to share. But anyway, more on color and even color temperature in that. All right, now you can see how fun is that, right? So I've still been working in the family of the cooler side of the color wheel. Now, I had my little taupey color down, and now I'm adding very lightly some directional strokes that are lighter. This is the lightest value I've used so far. And I'm even still adding in, this is another blue, a different color I'm using. I'm adding this to where I see areas of that fur on his head where it might be darker. So continually working on value. And also too, with animals, using directional strokes for their fur is very important. Also layering, like I've been talking about. Get your darker values down first, gradually layer your lights as you go. But the directional strokes are what really is going to give that feeling of fur. And what I mean by directional is, like, think of the middle of that cow's head, almost like the star, like you would see on a horse. The fur kind of radiates out in little arches kind of going around, almost like a star going around. And if you love cow paintings and you want to see more of that, check out artist Rita Kirkman. I have been just in awe of her. I mean, even when I first started painting with pastels, I ran across one of her paintings and I just was amazed the way she's an outstanding artist. Anyway, she has some amazing cow paintings, and she does such a good job of what I call efficiency of stroke. All of her strokes seem so perfectly placed and gestural, and she doesn't overwork anything, so it's very cool. So now I'm continuing still, once again, still just all very simple colors, but I have not really focused on using, well, I haven't at all focused on using exact colors for this reference image. I'm just using the values as a guide and choosing a color palette. I think you would call this right now, well, I added some green. It's still considered an analogous color palette. Monochromatic means you take one color, like blue, and you use all the different values in blue, light blue, medium blue, whatever, the whole range. Analogous means you choose colors on either side of that for your main color palette. And I said it's still somewhat analogous because green is kind of close in there with some of the turquoise and blues, but I'm getting a little warmer where I did the grass down there, some warmer greens as well. Now I'm back to using this kind of neutral. I loved this color. This is a great neutral color for things like mountains in the distance and trees that are far away. But this particular reference photo seemed to have like a mountain in the distance with a band of trees and then a little bit of sky in the background. Now I just glazed over a little bit of green that was a little more of a grassy green. Now I'm considering my focal point in this. A lot of times I will leave real textural marks in the grasses, but in this case it was all about the cow. Now I'm just adding a little bit of some sort of, I don't know, was that a tree line in the distance? Yes, I think so. And with regards to focal point, though, I want the cow to be the focal point. So even though I blended some on him, I did it initially just to kind of reduce that paper color showing through. I'm going to continue to add more textural marks on the cow. But with the grasses and the mountain, I want them to be pushed back. And one way to make your elements seem further away is to not have a lot of detail. Another way is don't have a lot of color. don't have a lot of detail, and have your colors, what's kind of the same thing, be a little bit more neutral. Colors also tend to get a little lighter in the distance, but consider what the subject matter is. And I'll lighten up these trees too. Once again, I typically work dark to light. I know that I can lay down lighter values to lighten things up. I want to give a little bit more of a bluish tone to those distant mountains. Oftentimes, that's another thing that happens in the distance. Colors cool off the further away they get. And this color palette so far is quite harmonious. If you'd like to create color palettes that are harmonious, try an analogous color palette. It's really quite easy. You just pick a color and then choose colors on either side of that on the color wheel, and keep your palette similar to that or in that family range of colors, using different values of those colors. Now I'm what's called, I guess, sky holes, or carving in my trees by negatively painting in the sky. And I don't want to draw too much attention away from the cow, so I want to keep this real simple. I also like to put in a little bit of a darker value sometimes in the sky, so it's not so stark and light compared to everything else. And I'm blending my little blending tool again. And now I'm just going to continue to work on this cow. The rest of this is just kind of piece of cake. You got your basic elements in, you have your roadmap, you've covered the entire surface. Also too, I don't like stark lines. I like painterly edges, so I just softened up that edge between the grass and the mountain. So I'm going to add some music at this point. Continue to watch me to develop this cow. And I wanted to say I did what I typically do. I just kept painting and painting and painting. But there were some stages, even this stage, I mean, it's pretty unfinished, but not too long after this stage, I really liked the unfinished quality. You know, I think that happens with artists. The more we paint, we get to where we really like a style that is more and more painterly, or should I say less and less detailed. And I have watched the evolution of many artists, some that are current, alive today, and even artists of the past. I think I mentioned in one of my videos recently, even Picasso, he started out with very realistic painting. Monet, I believe, probably Degas. I can't remember if I've researched his history, but many artists started out with very realistic painting, and the more you paint, the more you realize, I want to interpret this scene. I'm sorry, I missed some footage there. I did add some of the warmer tones. Notice his muzzle. I'm going to intensify some of the colors, but his muzzle is a bit warmer, of course, than some of the fur and the rest of the elements on his head. So I just continue to kind of work that. It's the same strategy though. I'm looking at color and value. I'm doing what I did in that little Photoshop demonstration. I'm trying to keep values similar. This pink is a little light right here, but I'm trying to keep values similar, but change the color a bit, or intensify the color a little bit. You can intensify the color without darkening or lightening the value necessarily, but you want to be careful with that. You don't want to overdo it. I can't remember who originally said the expression, if it's everywhere, it's nowhere. Meaning that if you do that bright color everywhere, you have just totally lost your focal point, and the viewer is going to start looking all over your painting at all the bright and pretty colors. So keep a neutrality about your painting in areas that you don't consider your focal point, and keep a little bit more detail, a little bit more vibrancy, a little bit more contrast of lights and darks in the areas that are your focal point. And if you don't know what is my focal point, just look at an image and think, what's the first thing that you thought, wow, look at that. Was it a poppy reaching up to the heavens? Was it a cow with his neat expression in his eyes? I think the focal point on this is pretty obvious. It's going to be the cow's head mostly. I don't want to give too much focal point to his fur down towards the bottom of the painting, because that's going to pull your eye right out of the painting or cause you to go away from this cow. The other elements are just supporting characters. So hopefully all that helps. And I did talk longer than I said. I am really going to add some music right now. So don't go anywhere though, because I'm going to be back at the end. And also too, if you're a patron of mine, keep in mind I am going to give you the original reference photo and some extra content. So enjoy to music, and I'll be back. some finishing touches here, and I just wanted to say how much I enjoy your comments. It blesses me so much to see how much you're learning and also how appreciative you are. Often I'm just in my world of creating videos and I don't realize how far we can really come as artists and how much we take for granted. And then I'll get a comment from one of you that shares just something you learned that is really basic, but I remember when it was an aha moment for me. So thank you. Continue to comment. Become a patron if you'd like extra content and to support this channel. And also you can give a little tip for this video now with a thanks. There's a thanks button underneath the video. So I appreciate you being here. There's links to all of my things and you check it out. Join, follow, subscribe, and God bless. And as always, happy and blessed painting.